Greetings, aspiring rocket scientists. I am Commander Tyrael, aerospace enthusiast and wannabe interstellar mission planner. The sequel to the acclaimed space flight simulation game, Kerbal Space Program, is finally here. The original game garnered a cult-like following, with years of support from the developers, enthusiastic and talented modders, and some truly ingenious players. Kerbal Space Program matured into one of the most loved games of recent memory, and is still enjoyed by many to this day. I spent a lot of time playing the original, and my experience was only limited by the game's engine and its tendency to be unpredictable during complex and crucial moments. The infamous Kraken was an integral part of the game experience, resulting in some hilarious and equally horrifying accidents out in the void. Private Division was kind enough to provide me with an early access key so I can give you guys a first look at the successor to that amazing title. Kerbal Space Program 2 has been fully redesigned from the ground up to meet the demands of modern and next-generation space exploration, all while maintaining the monumental foundations of the first game. Build a space program, construct powerful spacecraft, and navigate expansive celestial bodies as you explore cosmic mysteries. Releasing in early access as an homage to the original game's launch, KSP2 will allow players to see features as they are built and provide feedback to shape the game through its development. New features will be periodically added throughout early access that will captivate veterans and returning players, including the addition of new star systems, interstellar travel technologies, colonies, multiplayer, and more. The devs hope to improve the onboarding process and lower the skill ceiling for a whole new generation of spaceflight experts, who will learn the fundamentals of rocket science through the true scientific method, trial and error. New animated tutorials, improved UI, and a fully revamped assembly and flight interface allow both experienced and novice players to quickly put their creativity to the test without sacrificing any of the challenge from the original game. The overhauled vehicle assembly interface includes part sorting and blueprint view for making precise adjustments. Clouds, atmospheric scattering, and an all-new terrain system combined from the ground level all the way to orbit. You can now use time warp while accelerating and plan complex maneuvers with ease using a new maneuver planner. Sphere of influence and atmospheric indicators take the guesswork out of interplanetary maneuvers. The devs have laid out a roadmap to illustrate the features still to come. For now, we have access to a fairly robust step-by-step tutorial, breaking down these complex mechanics into easy-to-digest and easily repeatable scenarios. We also have access to sandbox mode, and are able to use a huge variety of parts to start our own self-motivated missions. I said it before, but I'll say it again. Welcome to Kerbal Space Program 2. First look at the early access. We're setting up our Space Force, or our space agency, the Reaper Wing Space Agency. Colors will be black and red. And then we'll see if we can find an interesting flag. Nothing really appeals to me, so we'll go for something simple. Today's goal is to go through the tutorials and reacquaint myself with how the game works. It's been about 4 or 5 years since I last played. We'll just watch this introduction and I'll be back shortly.
Your new space program, leaping forward into the cosmos. Since the dawn of Kerbalkind, we have looked to the sky and wondered what sublime mysteries lie hidden in the darkness, like jewels never beheld. These untold treasures may soon reveal themselves due to the efforts of recently founded Kerbal Space Program.
Oh my, I think that might have been the only copy of the orientation film. Hold on! Slides, somewhere. Welcome to your first day running the Kerbal Space Program. This campus hosts the greatest ever gathering of astronomers, astronauts, and engineers. After years of focused effort, this collection of geniuses has created several very impressive buildings. We believe we have all the necessary pieces to take our first steps off the ground. The best way to advance our technologies further is to get up there and learn by doing. All we need now is somebody to show us how to put all these parts together. Well, we also need somebody to help us out with the flying. We need a lot of help, actually. That's why you're here. My name is Paige, by the way. If you need any hints, feel free to visit me over at the training center. Everything in there is well padded, so it's a great place to get up and running. Welcome aboard!
I haven't even played it yet, and I am already on board. Our engineers have created a training program that will guide you through the building and flying of your first spacecraft. If you want to start building right away, head over to the vehicle assembly building. We'll go to the training center, and we'll just get acclimatized to our future life in space. Got divided into categories. Seems like it's teaching every single stage of getting to space. Excuse the fun.
Space is
Let's
the
watch
place.
this other one and see what we can learn.
So you want to get to space.
Indeed.
Have you tried rockets? Rockets use fuel and engines to create thrust, which propels them forward. When a fuel tank is empty, it is dropped to stay as lightweight as possible, allowing the rocket to go even faster. These tanks, as well as other expendable parts of a rocket, are called stages. Different stages do different things. Often the first stage is very powerful, with just enough fuel to get the vehicle through the atmosphere. The second stage usually has a low-thrust engine that, while not as powerful, is more fuel efficient. After dropping the heavier first stage and leaving the atmosphere, the second stage engine pushes the much lighter second stage to orbital speed. On a flight to space, the final stage parachutes back down to the surface, ideally in one piece.
I really like that. The music, the art style. Sort of reminds me of a show that my kids watch called The Storybots, which in itself is an educational program. Here we go.
We're ready
First
to light
launch
this
coming
candle.
up.
In this flight, you're going all the way to orbit. I'll walk you through the process of launching, executing a gravity turn to get moving sideways, coasting to orbital altitude, and doing a final burn at the top of your arc to establish a stable orbit.
Check.
Before we begin, let's talk about the nav ball. The nav ball shows your vehicle's orientation relative
Super
to the horizon.
important that you know
The
how
blue
to
half
read
of
this.
the ball represents the sky, and the brown half represents the ground. The level indicator at the center shows your vehicle's orientation. When you turn, the ball turns.
So we'll skip that.
At launch, you want all your engines
I just want her
at
to let me set
maximum
the fire
thrust,
already.
which means you need to set your throttle at 100%. Your solid fuel boosters are way ahead of you on this. They have no setting other than full throttle, and they can't be shut off once they're lit. Once you hit the go button, they'll go full tilt until they run out of fuel. Still, your main engine's throttle is in your control.
Understood. So
You
we
can
will
see your
set
main
our
throttle
throttle to 100%.
Left shift, your fuel levels are visible within the staging stack. Right now, you can see that your main engine and 4 boosters are all topped off and ready to rumble. It's time to go.
3,500.
At the start,
Delta
all you
V?
need to do is fly straight up. I'll check
think
back
that's
in with
enough
you
to
once
get to
those
orbit.
boosters are empty.
If I'm
Good
not
luck.
mistaken. Just enough to get to orbit. And we're off. The audio's cool. Seems to be running pretty well. I'm not running this at 4K, just to
All
save
right,
my
solid
graphics
fuel
card
boosters are
the
empty.
pain.
Let's drop them. It's time to start your gravity turn. A gravity turn uses the pull of the planet's gravity to help bend your vertical ascent into a horizontal arc.
Looks like one of those
It's the
boosters
first
didn't
step
come off
to
properly.
entering orbit. For our first flight to orbit, we're going to start our gravity turn up to where the air is thin, at an altitude of around 10,000 meters. To show you where to aim your rocket, I've placed a target marker on your nav ball.
Okay, the marker is off to our east at 90 degrees on the compass. So we'll start tilting over, using the gimbal rocket here to steer. And we've hit the marker, which is slightly off. A little bit of a wobble to the rocket. Pretty maneuverable, not as maneuverable as the ones I usually build. Right, we're out of fuel. Now the devs did warn me there is a few bugs within the tutorial that are being worked on. Seems like we haven't triggered the next, but that's okay. We're going to go to space ourselves. We'll just do it the way I remember doing it. Now we just disconnected that second stage there. Fortunately the tutorial box is not going to go away, but that's okay. We'll straighten up towards the horizon just to free ourselves from that capsule behind. Have a look at the map now. The top of our arc here is called the apoapsis. We want to create a maneuver plan just before there to burn towards the horizon and extend that ballistic arc into an orbital arc. I'm skipping half the tutorial doing it this way, but it seems like we're going to have to. So we'll just put as much boost as we can until that orbit starts to circularize. You can see that now we're not touching the planet. Add a little bit more boost to bring the periapsis around to where our current apoapsis is, or the peak of our arc. A little bit less to make it a bit more circular. Okay. So we have, if you see the down the bottom, there's a little timer ticking down from T minus 2 minutes. That's how long we have until we need to initiate our burn. So we speed up time a little bit. And just beforehand, we'll point at our target marker, which is the white marker on the nav ball. 22 seconds remaining until the burn needs to start. You can speed this up, but I don't recommend it. You can miss the burn start time. Counting down to 1 burn. Full throttle burn for 1 minute and 10 seconds. So, pretty casual. We have enough delta V to complete that burn, just. In the little box there, you can see that it requires just over 1400 delta V to complete this burn, and we have just about that much still in the tank after already burning for 30 seconds or so. So we are safe within the parameters there. You can see our trajectory marker is starting to stretch out to match our predicted course. The yellow line is our predicted course. And we want to skip it around so it's no longer touching Kerbin. Almost there, keep adding it. There we go. So now we have achieved an orbit. It's just a matter of creating the desired orbit. Now the burn timer said that we should have stopped, but I'm not happy with that trajectory that we're on. So I'll continue to burn a little bit longer. Little bits of throttle there to fine tune it. And we have achieved orbit. So I think I will just exit. So we'll point retrograde, which is facing the opposite way, and we will initiate a burn just to fine tune our orbit a little bit more so it's not so elliptical. And because I like things to be round. Not really how the tutorial was supposed to go, I'm assuming, but we achieved what we set out to do, I guess. Although that apoapsis is at 700 kilometers, that's pretty high. So we'll go back to the menu.
Orbits are weird.
And I bet this is going to
Remember your
teach what
orbiting
I just
baseball?
demonstrated.
What if you wanted to make its orbit higher? Well, it's a baseball, so grab your bat and try to hit the ball to a higher orbit. Your first thought might be to try to deflect the ball upwards. Unfortunately, hitting the ball upward bends its orbit so that it hits the ground before it can return to you. What you need to do is hit the ball in the direction it's already moving, adding to its already high velocity. Now that you've sped the ball up, why isn't it flying any higher? It just keeps whizzing by at the same height it always did. After all, I said that making it go faster would make it go higher. What gives? The ball is actually going higher, but it's going higher on the opposite side of the planet.
That's the orbit we just made.
You've raised its orbit, and you've learned the first lesson of orbital maneuvering. Your actions affect the opposite side of your orbit. Weird, huh? So your ball is moving faster, but it's still passing you at the same height. How do you get its orbit higher on this side of the planet? Now that you know how changes in velocity affect the other side of your orbit, you've got all you need. By adding velocity to the ball at the highest point in its orbit, you raise the lowest point in its orbit and make it circular again.
Pretty easy. What you do on one side of an orbit happens on the other. Easy in theory.
Remember how you circularized your orbit
Doesn't
by
always
increasing
work
your
in
forward
practice.
velocity? To raise your orbit, you'll just do more of the same. It's time to burn prograde. Now that we're pointed the right way, we can increase the throttle and watch our orbit expand.
Throttle up again. Prograde, like she said, is facing the direction of orbit.
Ooh, cut the throttle. If you overdo it, you'll leave Kerbin's orbit entirely.
Throttle to 0.
Nice. That maneuver raised our orbit on the other side of Kerbin, so we will enter high orbit there. Waiting to reach a specific point can be as eventful as watching the neon stripes on your rover dry. The paint job will be worth it, but isn't it better to rush to the end? Skip ahead to the good stuff using a time warp.
We already did by making this exact same orbit in the last tutorial. Oops, I think I overshot that by a few rotations. There we go. Continue.
Like I said earlier, the highest point of our orbit is called the apoapsis. The lowest point of our orbit is known as the periapsis. By default, your camera is focused on your vessel, so if you can't see either of these points, adjust your camera. Scroll the middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Double-click an object to center your camera on it. Click the middle mouse button. Excellent! You can time warp to any position on your trajectory by selecting a point on your vehicle's current path, and then selecting Time Warp to Point.
Much easier than trying to eyeball it like I did before. You can miss your launch window if you use too much time compression.
Now you're way up in the sky, so high that if you circularize your orbit now, you'll be in high orbit. Wow, the black starry void looks so small from here.
Not quite as high as our last orbit. I think we were at 700 kilometers at the apoapsis, which is a long way from home. Next, bring it on.
The crew will run out of snacks. Did you know a Kerbal is 99.9% more likely to crash when hungry? That's when it's time to head back down to Kerbin. Remember how we burned prograde to raise our orbit? To lower our orbit, we burn in the opposite direction, retrograde. SAS now flip retrograde, the opposite direction to our rocket's movement. All right, the rocket is aligned to retrograde. Increase the throttle and burn until our trajectory is just past the atmosphere.
So far I'm enjoying the new UI. I think
watch what's happening to our
fairly easy to
periapsis.
read.
Once it enters the atmosphere, this rocket is on a path back to the ground. Don't ease off the throttle yet, though. We're
Too
going to
late.
keep burning
I'm
until our
cautious.
trajectory intercepts the ground. This should give us a good idea where our capsule will land. That's it. Let's stop our burn. Now that we're on a collision course with Kerbin, we need to turn that collision into something more survivable. This process of crashing without dying is called landing. Our upcoming stage will activate a decoupler,
Pretty
dropping
rare.
the engine and exposing a very important heat shield. Why don't you do that now?
Drop the final stage. Heat shield
Great.
out.
We're on our way down, and our heat shield is exposed. Have you ever wondered what a marshmallow feels like when it catches on
We'll see this
fire?
one through to the landing,
You're about
I
to
think.
find out.
The thermal mechanics hadn't yet been activated in my copy of the early access build, so yeah, we didn't get to see any flashy fires.
Orbital transfers.
This is what I need the refresher on. I used
As you
mods
know,
to
the
work mine
faster
out
you
in
go,
the first
the
game.
higher your orbit gets. If you get moving fast enough, your orbit may cross the orbit of some other object, like a moon or a planet. The closest celestial body to Kerbin is the Mun. If you're looking for somewhere else to fly a rocket, the Mun is a good choice. The real trick to getting there is timing your departure so that the Mun captures your vehicle at its highest point. If you mistime your departure, you may miss the Mun entirely, which creates a lot of paperwork. Let's assume you've left at the right time and the Mun is there to meet you. As your vessel approaches the Mun, it enters a zone in which the Mun's gravitational influence on your orbit is stronger than Kerbin's. This zone is called the Mun's sphere of influence. You've had to go very quickly to escape Kerbin's gravity, much too fast for the Mun's low gravity.
Just chilling.
If you don't slow down, your vehicle will speed past the Mun and be flung farther into space.
Eat.
Remember what I said about paperwork?
I have a feeling that's going to be
Once you're in the
our
Mun's
space
gravity
agency's
well,
fate.
The best way to slow down is to fire your engines backwards until your trajectory becomes a nice, stable orbit. Now you're a moon of the Mun.
Sure, boy. Alright, so now we know the theory of getting to the Mun. Let's see if we can
Our
get
rocket
there
is
in
in orbit over
practice.
Kerbin and ready to fly. The mission today is to, drumroll please,
Get to the
intercept and
Mun.
orbit the Mun. To be captured by the Mun's gravity, our vessel must cross into the Mun's sphere of influence, or SOI, the zone in which its gravity is stronger than any other celestial body around it.
That's one of the features I didn't particularly enjoy from the first game, trying to figure out
We're going to create a maneuver plan
how to read
figure
the
out when
astromap.
and how long we need to fire our engines to intercept the Mun.
Righty, so we need to make a maneuver plan like we did before. Fairly easy.
Great! Now here's a new trick. We can select any object as a target in map view. Targeting gives us useful information and enables new tools. Once we've targeted a celestial body or other object in space, our maneuver will provide closest pass and plane angle information.
Okay.
This can be very helpful for meeting up with someone or something in space.
Sounds easy.
Right now, our camera is following our vessel as it orbits Kerbin. Let's adjust our camera until we can see the Mun. Then, right-click to target it.
Right click. Set target.
We want to place this maneuver plan with two things in mind. First, the Mun is in motion. We can't aim our spacecraft where the Mun is right now. Instead, we have to aim where the Mun will be after our vehicle has coasted all the way from Kerbin. Second, remember how increasing velocity raises the opposite side of our orbit? Since we're placing this maneuver plan where we intend to start our burn, we should place it on the opposite side of Kerbin from where we intend to intercept the Mun.
So about here-ish.
Placing a maneuver plan usually involves making a best guess, and then fiddling with the maneuver until you get an intercept. Fortunately, you've got a crack navigator with you today. By my calculations, we'll want to put our maneuver here.
Yep, which is where we thought it might be. Create a maneuver
Excellent.
plan.
We've just created a maneuver plan.
Click on it.
While we could find out if our departure timing is correct by just picking a direction and maxing the throttle, a maneuver plan tells us in advance how much delta V we'll need, how long we'll need to burn, and in what direction our vessel will need to point during the maneuver.
Alright, so we need to add lots of prograde.
Grab and pull the arrows to plan a burn along that direction. This maneuver is pretty simple. We want to burn prograde and expand our orbit. Nice.
There we go.
That maneuver event towards the end of your trajectory is exactly what we're looking for.
Fairly simple
It tells that
because
if we
the
execute
Mun
this
is
plan,
on the same
we'll
orbital
intercept
plane
the
as
Mun.
us, and that's why it's the easiest stellar object to get to. Once they start being on different orbital planes, it can be a little bit different or a little bit tricky to figure it out.
If a maneuver looks right, but we're not getting the intercept we expect, we can change the starting position of the maneuver by grabbing and dragging the middle of the maneuver plan along our orbit. It's very common to refine a maneuver plan by adjusting both the position of the maneuver and the direction of the planned burn.
It just feels like the original game with a butt ton of quality of life and all the mods I ever played attached to
we
it.
can delete the plan, either by right-clicking the gizmo and selecting delete, or through the burn timer.
And we are
Maneuvers
done.
are invaluable when leaving Kerbin. Feel free to come back and practice anytime.
Next time we'll go for real. So that's all for the tutorials. I didn't show you them all because I would like you to experience them yourself, and I already sort of know how to do it. But in the next video, we're going to make a rocket, we're going to head to the Mun, we're going to try and take as many Kerbals as we can, and see what else sort of transpires from there. Make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next episode. Until then, Commander Tyrael out.